The fire alarm called me at 11:58 on a Thursday night, but my son called first. "Dad, don't come down here," Aaron said. "The fire department has it contained." Behind his voice, I heard sirens and breaking glass. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. "Eli wired the battery cabinet wrong." Eli was Aaron's 17-year-old son, my grandson. He had spent every Saturday for 2 years learning electrical work beside me in the old workshop my wife and I had built from an abandoned streetcar garage. Aaron said Eli had caused the fire, lied about finishing the job, and endangered everyone in the building. He wanted me to sign an insurance statement before sunrise. But when I reached the workshop, I saw a yellow torque mark on the main disconnect. I had placed that mark myself. Someone had broken it after Eli went home. I was 64 years old, a retired union electrician, and part-time community college instructor. My son thought that meant I was sentimental, tired, and easy to rush. He had forgotten that I had spent 40 years learning what burned by accident, and what burned because someone needed it to. If you have ever watched a family blame the quietest person in the room, you know why I did not accuse Aaron that night. I protected Eli first. Then I started counting what did not fit. The Mercer Trade Lab sat on the east side of Toledo, Ohio, in a brick building with tall steel windows and a faded number 12 painted over the bay door. Long before it became a workshop, city crews had repaired streetcars there. The floor still had 2 narrow rails buried in the concrete, and when the afternoon sun came through the west windows, those rails shone like lines drawn through the past. My wife Nina loved the place before it had heat. We bought it 25 years earlier, when the roof leaked into 5 different buckets and pigeons had claimed the loft. Nina ran adult education programs for the public library. I was a union electrician with bad knees and a habit of bringing home tools I swore I would need one day. She walked through that ruined building in a red wool coat, looked at the cracked walls and said, "Kids who hate classrooms would love this." She was right. We spent 3 years fixing it on weekends. I handled the wiring. Nina found grants for benches, safety equipment, and evening classes for teenagers who struggled in ordinary classrooms. After she died from a stroke 8 years ago, I kept the lab open because closing it felt like locking the last door she had touched. That was one reason Aaron resented it. The other reason was me. Aaron was 39, broad-shouldered, quick, with a smile, and better at selling an idea than finishing one. As a boy, he wanted more of my time than I gave him. He later left the electrical apprenticeship to start a home automation company. He said union work was too slow. I said slow kept people alive. We loved each other, but we had spent 20 years speaking through old disappointments. His company, Mercer Smart Systems, rented the south half of the trade lab. The arrangement had started small. He stored ladders there, then inventory, then 2 service vans. I charged him less than market rent because he was my son, and because I believed having him close might repair what distance had not. My flaw was thinking access created closeness. Sometimes it only gives resentment a key. Eli was different from his father. He spoke carefully, as if he wanted each sentence to arrive in one piece. He had dyslexia and had struggled in school until we discovered he could understand a wiring diagram faster than most adults. He could trace a fault through 3 junction boxes without losing the path. He just needed time to read labels and someone who did not mistake hesitation for ignorance. Every Saturday, he came to the lab carrying my old metal lunchbox. I had given it to him the day he completed his first clean panel. Inside were 2 peanut butter sandwiches, an apple, a folding rule, and a yellow paint marker. The marker was my habit. Whenever we torqued a lug to specification, I drew a thin line across the screw and the metal beside it. If the line broke, the connection had been moved. Electricity doesn't care who you meant to be, I told him. It only cares what you actually connected. Eli rolled his eyes whenever I said it, which meant he had heard it enough to remember. 3 weeks before the fire, Aaron asked if he could install a demonstration battery cabinet in the North Bay. His company had begun selling backup power systems to large homes, and he wanted a display for clients. I said yes with conditions. No permanent connection until the city signs off, I told him. And no one touches the fire alarm loop. Aaron laughed. Dad, I know code. I know you know it. I'm reminding you that the building belongs to me. His smile thinned. Eli helped mount the empty cabinet to the wall. On the last Saturday before the fire, he installed low-voltage monitoring wires under my supervision. He did not connect the battery modules. He did not energize the cabinet. I watched him leave at 4:17 carrying the metal lunchbox. Before we locked up, I tightened the main disconnect lugs and marked them with the yellow paint pen. That was the mark I found broken Thursday night. The fire had started inside the battery cabinet and climbed the plywood display wall behind it. The sprinkler above the North Bay activated, limiting the damage, but smoke blackened the ceiling and heat cracked 2 windows. Firefighters cut power to the building and dragged a melted battery module onto the loading apron. Aaron stood near his van in a company jacket. His wife, Paige, was beside him, arms folded tight across her chest. She looked frightened. Aaron looked busy. He met me before I reached the bay door. You shouldn't be walking around, he said. The investigator hasn't released the scene. I'm staying outside the tape. He lowered his voice. Eli was the last one working on that cabinet. No. He worked on the monitoring circuit Saturday. He came back tonight. I looked at him. Why? To fix something. He told me he'd forgotten a connection. Where is he? At home, with Paige. Paige said he locked himself in his room. Aaron took a folded form from his jacket. The insurer needs an initial property statement. Just basic facts. I filled in what happened. I did not take it. It's midnight, I said. If we move fast, we can get demolition approved before the structure gets red tagged. I looked past him at the building Nina and I had rebuilt, one joist at a time. It's been burning for 20 minutes, Aaron. I'm trying to protect us. That phrase would come back more than once. A city fire investigator named Len Brooks walked over and asked who owned the property. I do, I said. Aaron answered at the same time. It's a family facility. Len looked between us. I'll need statements from both of you tomorrow. For now, nobody enters without permission. I pointed toward the battery cabinet. Was the fire alarm active? The sprinkler flow alarm transmitted, he said. The local heat detector in that bay did not report before activation. Could be fire damage. Could be a fault. We'll know more after inspection. Aaron shifted his weight. I asked one more question. What time did the fire start? Based on the system log, around 11:48. Aaron touched my elbow. Dad, let's go. I stepped away from his hand. At his house, the porch light was on. Paige unlocked the door but did not come inside with me. She stayed in the driveway with Aaron. Eli's bedroom was at the end of the hall. I knocked twice. It's Grandpa. The lock clicked. He opened the door wearing sweatpants and a gray hoodie. His face was white. I didn't do it, he said before I could speak. I know what I watched you do Saturday. Tell me about tonight. He sat on the edge of his bed. Dad texted me at 10:30. He said the monitor wasn't reading and I had to come fix it before his client meeting tomorrow. You went alone. He picked me up. What did you touch? The little control transformer. It wasn't powered. I checked the 2 low-voltage leads and told him the main cabinet still wasn't connected. Then what? He got mad. He said I was making excuses. He told me to initial the work log so he could show you I'd finished. Did you? Eli looked at the floor. I initialed the line that said monitor check. I didn't read the next line right. The words were crowded. What did the next line say? Battery commissioning. He wiped his palms on his knees. Dad said it didn't matter because he'd done the main work. Then he drove me home. At 11:30, he left again. Did you see him energize the cabinet? No. Did you see battery modules inside it? He nodded. They were already there tonight. They weren't there Saturday. I waited. Eli's voice dropped. He said if anyone asked, I installed them after school. What did you say? I said no. Then he said I was almost 18 and nobody would hire me if I had a safety incident on my record. That was the real emergency. Not the smoke, not the building. A father had looked at his own son and decided fear was easier to use than truth. I called Paige into the room. Aaron tried to follow, but I blocked the doorway. This conversation is with Eli and his mother, I said. I am his father. And right now he says you told him to lie about a fire. Aaron's face changed. Not guilt, calculation. Eli gets confused under pressure, he said. Eli flinched. I turned to Paige. He needs a safe place tonight. He can stay with me if you agree. Paige looked at Aaron, then at her son. Go pack a bag, she said. Aaron's voice rose. You're rewarding him for lying. No, Paige said. I'm giving everybody one night without you shouting. Eli packed the metal lunchbox, too. At my house, I made up the guest room and told him he did not have to explain anything else until morning. He stood in the doorway, twisting the lunchbox handle. Are they going to take me out of the trade program, he asked. Not because your father says so. What if I signed the wrong line? Then we tell the truth about the wrong line. He swallowed. Dad says people won't believe me because reading is hard for me. I had no comforting answer that was completely honest. So I gave him the useful one. People believe patterns. We're going to find the pattern. The next morning, Aaron pounded on my front door. You took my son. Paige agreed he could stay. He misunderstood what happened. Then we'll clear it up with the investigator. Aaron warned that the insurer could deny the claim and destroy his company. When I said Eli mattered more than his paperwork, he called this a lesson in accepting consequences. You are not speaking to him alone until Paige and he agree, I said. You can't decide that. No, but I can decide who enters my house. I closed the door. At 9, I met Len Brooks at the trade lab. An insurance adjuster named Dana Price joined us. Aaron arrived carrying a laptop and a folder of service records. Len released the south office and loading area but kept the north bay sealed. Donna asked who had authorized the battery installation. Aaron said I did through my company. Was it permitted? We were preparing the permit package. So no, it was a demonstration unit, not a permanent installation. I looked at the charred conduit entering the cabinet. A demonstration unit does not need a feeder sized to power a house. Dana asked whether the unit had been energized. Aaron glanced at me. My son may have energized it without permission. I said Eli denies that. Aaron opened the work log on his laptop. His initials are here under commissioning. Dana leaned closer. How old is he? 17. Is he a licensed electrician? No, but he works under supervision. Whose supervision? Aaron's jaw tightened. Mine. That answer mattered. Len asked about the missing heat detector signal. Aaron said the fire might have damaged the loop before it reported. I walked to the alarm panel outside the taped area. The inspection tag was new. Not renewed, new. The old yellow tag from Miller Fire Protection had been tied to the panel door with wire for 3 years. I knew the technician's handwriting. The new tag was red and printed by a contractor I did not recognize, North Coast Systems. When was this tag changed? I asked. Aaron shrugged. Routine service. Why wasn't I notified? You don't need to approve every filter and battery replacement. It's my alarm system. Dana photographed the tag. Aaron gave me a look that said I was making trouble where cooperation would have been easier. That look had worked on me for years. It did not work that morning. At home, I found a 6-week-old inspection showing every detector active. Miller Fire Protection had not replaced the tag. North Coast Systems confirmed a one-time service call on Tuesday, 2 days before the fire, but said Mercer Smart Systems was the customer of record. I asked them to preserve the work order and technician photos. At noon, a certified envelope arrived at my house. It had been sent to the trade lab, refused, and returned to my home because I was the property owner on the utility account. Inside was an unpaid invoice from North Coast Systems, temporary isolation of North Bay heat detector. Customer requested loop bypass during battery display construction. Restoration by customer's licensed electrician. The service date was Tuesday. The technician had written one note by hand. Customer declined full alarm shutdown. Advised bypass must not remain active during occupancy or energized equipment testing. Aaron had known the detector was disabled. That was the first layer beyond Eli's story. The fire alarm had not failed in the flames. Someone had turned off the exact warning device above the cabinet 2 days earlier. I called Dana and Len told them about the invoice and emailed scans. Then I put the original in a plastic sleeve. I did not call Aaron. At 2, he texted me, "Need your signature today. Delays will hurt all of us." I replied with one sentence, "I will not sign until the facts are verified." He answered immediately, "You always choose process over family." That accusation had weight, because part of it was true. When Aaron was young, I had worked storms, hospital upgrades, school shutdowns. I believed showing up for work was showing up for my family. Nina understood the difference between duty and absence. Aaron only experienced the empty chair. But an old wound does not become a license to create a new victim. At my kitchen table, Eli showed me how the crowded digital form had made the commissioning line look like a continuation of the monitor check. Then he mentioned that Aaron had used an employee code to open a keypad on the cabinet. I had not known Aaron installed a keypad. That was a decision. I could have driven to the shop, cut the lock, and searched the cabinet controller. Instead, I called Dana and asked whether the keypad data could be preserved before power was restored. She arranged for the manufacturer to image the access log in the presence of the fire investigator. The results would take days. Meanwhile, Aaron kept moving. On Saturday morning, he called 3 of our volunteer instructors and told them the trade lab was permanently closed. He said I had become emotionally unable to manage the property and that the fire proved the program was unsafe. By noon, 2 parents had called me asking whether Eli had caused the fire. Aaron was not waiting for facts. He was building a story faster than I could inspect it. I made my second consequential decision. I suspended Mercer Smart Systems' access to the undamaged South Bay for safety review. The lease allowed it after a hazardous incident involving unapproved equipment. I sent written notice, changed the exterior keypad code, and scheduled supervised access for Aaron's employees to retrieve customer tools. Aaron arrived furious, tore the supervised access schedule in half, and accused me of wanting the lab more than I wanted him. "The lab never asked me to lie," I said. His face hardened. "You'll regret humiliating me." He walked back to his truck. That evening, Paige came to my house alone. She sat at the kitchen table while Eli stayed upstairs. "How bad is it?" she asked. "I don't know yet. Aaron says the detector was disabled because your old system kept faulting. It passed inspection 6 weeks ago." She pressed her fingers to her temple. "There's something you need to see." She showed me an email from a commercial real estate broker titled Mercer Site Revised Valuation After Loss. It said a warehouse buyer remained interested if the North Bay was declared uneconomical to repair, and asked when Aaron expected to control the title. "I never agreed to sell." "I know," Paige said. "He started talking to the broker in January. A commercial project failed, clients sued, suppliers are unpaid, and he said this property was the only way out." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because he said you'd look at him the way you're looking at me now." I softened my face, but not the question. "How am I looking at you? Like you're trying to decide how much I knew." "How much did you know?" "I knew about the broker. I knew he wanted the insurance money. I did not know he disabled the detector." I did not know he put Eli's name on anything. Did you know the battery cabinet was energized Thursday? No. I believed she was telling part of the truth. Maybe all of it. But belief was not enough anymore. Send the email to Dana and Len, I said. Not just to me. She nodded. Before she left, she asked if Eli could stay another week. You're his mother, I said. What do you think? I think he is afraid to come home. Then say that plainly. Her eyes filled. He is afraid to come home. I called Aaron and told him Eli would remain with me with Paige's consent. Aaron said he would call the police. I said, tell them the truth when they arrive. He did not call. On Monday, I met with Marisol Vega, the apprenticeship coordinator at Lakeview Community College. She had worked 22 years as an industrial electrician before moving into education. She knew both Aaron and Eli. I showed her the work log. She examined it without speaking. This form is wrong, she said. How? Minors in our pre-apprenticeship program cannot sign commissioning records. A supervising electrician must sign the task and list the student as observer or assistant. Aaron created the form. I can see that. Can Eli be removed from the program because he initialed it, not without review? Especially if he was directed by the supervisor. She looked at me. Frank, has Aaron used students on his paid jobs? I don't know. Find out. That opened the second layer wider. The lab sign-in sheets widened the pattern. I had approved 3 supervised field visits. Aaron had recorded 9, all listing Eli. 5 fell on school days when Eli had never been present. 2 other teenagers said they had pulled cable on paid jobs while believing they were attending class. The fire was not the first time Aaron had treated students as cover. Marisol suspended all placement activity with Mercer Smart Systems and opened a formal program review. She did not rescue us. She could only address the school side. I still had to prove what happened inside the battery cabinet. On Tuesday, the manufacturer sent the keypad access log. The cabinet had been opened at 10:44 p.m. using Eli's temporary training code. Aaron seized on that immediately. He emailed everyone involved. The access log confirms Eli opened the cabinet. For a few minutes, I felt the floor shift. Eli insisted he had not entered a code. I don't even know my code, he said. Dad set it up. Did he ever tell you the number? No. Marisol asked how temporary codes were assigned. The manufacturer explained that the administrator created them and could see or change them at any time. Aaron was the administrator, but that did not prove who used the code. His strongest defense was now clear. Eli had access, Eli had initials on the log, and Eli had been present that night. Aaron could claim the disabled detector was a separate construction issue and the fire was an apprentice's mistake. We needed more than suspicion. I went back to the trade lab maintenance file and found the invoice for an energy monitoring system I had installed the previous fall. It was a teaching tool, small current sensors around the main feeders connected to a data logger. Students used it to compare power draw from motors lighting and battery chargers. The system was not part of Aaron's equipment. It belonged to the lab. I had almost forgotten it because the classroom display tablet was damaged in the sprinkler water. The data, however, backed up automatically to a secure web portal under my account. I logged in. The North Bay feeder showed almost no load all day Thursday. At 11:41 p.m., a small control load appeared. At 11:46, the battery inverter energized. At 11:48, the current spiked far above the configured demonstration limit. At 11:49, the feeder opened. The important detail was not only the time. The system also recorded which sub-panel breaker had been closed to energize the cabinet. It was the disconnect with my broken yellow torque mark. Eli had been dropped at home before 11:15. Paige's doorbell camera showed him entering the house at 11:13, with Aaron's truck leaving the driveway 2 minutes later. Aaron had returned to the lab alone. That was the third layer. The fire was not an apprentice's mistake. Someone had used Eli's code, closed the feeder, and energized an unapproved battery cabinet after disabling the heat detector. I called Dana. "This is the pattern," I said. She was silent while I walked her through the data. "Do not send this to Aaron yet," she said. "The insurer will request it formally. I want Eli cleared. We will document what the data shows. But the claim review and any fraud decision will take time." I understand. That was the difference between revenge and process. Revenge wants the next 5 minutes. Process asks whether the truth will survive 5 months. The insurer scheduled an examination for the following Monday in a conference room at the County Fire Administration Building. Dana would attend with the insurer's counsel. Len Brooks would present the fire findings. Aaron and I were both asked to bring records. Marisol was invited regarding the student work log. Paige received a separate request. Aaron spent the week trying to stop the meeting from becoming what he feared. First, he offered to settle privately. "If you sign the property claim as accidental," he said, "I'll accept the code violations and keep Eli out of the final report." "You put him in the first one." I panicked. Then his control cracked. "You look at him like he's the son you were supposed to have. Eli is not your replacement. He gets your patience. I got rules. You needed more patience from me. That does not make him responsible for your debt." Aaron looked toward the floor, then repeated, "Sign the claim." "No." The next day, he called Nina's younger sister, 2 former instructors, and 3 members of the Community College Advisory Board. He told them I was confused by grief and protecting Eli from consequences. One board member called to ask whether I should step away from the lab. I answered every question with documents, not speeches. The lab was closed pending inspection. The students were safe. Eli's involvement was under review. I would not speculate before the official meeting. On Friday, I made my 3rd consequential decision. I terminated Mercer Smart Systems' lease for unauthorized hazardous equipment, alteration of the alarm system, and material misrepresentation. The termination would not remove Aaron's property immediately. He had supervised retrieval dates and the right to challenge the notice, but he no longer had the power to operate from the trade lab. I also removed him from the building insurance contacts and the alarm administration account. When he received the notice, he left me a voicemail. "You finally did it," he said. "You chose that building over your own son." I saved the voicemail but did not use it as evidence of the fire. It proved anger, not arson. That distinction mattered. Sunday afternoon, Eli and I stood outside the taped North Bay, while Len allowed us into the undamaged classroom to retrieve teaching materials. The room smelled of wet plaster and smoke. Nina's old red coat still hung on a peg near the office. I had kept it there after she died because removing it felt too final. Eli touched the metal lunchbox on the workbench. "I shouldn't come back," he said. "Why? Every time Dad looks at me, he sees you. That is his problem to solve. What if he's right about one thing?" "Which thing?" "That I get more patience from you." I sat on the edge of a workbench. "He is right." Eli looked surprised. "I learned too late that patience is not something people should have to earn by becoming useful," I said. "Your father needed more of it from me when he was young." "That is true. It is also true that he tried to make you carry his consequences." "Both things can be true." Eli stared at the rails in the concrete. "Do you hate him?" he asked. "No." "Are you going to forgive him?" "I don't know what forgiveness looks like yet." He nodded. That was the most honest answer I had. Monday's examination took place in a gray conference room on the 2nd floor of the Fire Administration Building. A long table filled most of the room. There were no cameras, no audience, and no dramatic seal on the wall. Just fluorescent lights, water pitchers, folders, and people whose job was to make facts line up. Aaron arrived with an attorney. Paige came separately and sat near the door. I sat beside Marisol. Eli was not required to attend, and I had planned to keep him away from the confrontation. Then Marisol told me he was downstairs. He asked to speak for himself, she said. I looked at Paige. She nodded. I brought him. That was the unexpected person Aaron saw when Eli entered the room carrying the old metal lunchbox. Aaron's hand tightened around his pen. Why is he here? He asked. Eli answered before anyone else could. Because you keep speaking for me. The room went quiet. Dana began with ownership and insurance questions. I confirmed that I owned the building and that Mercer Smart Systems rented the South Bay. I explained that the battery cabinet had not been approved as a permanent installation. Aaron's attorney emphasized that the system was a demonstration unit and that a supervised trainee had accessed it the night of the fire. Then Len presented the alarm findings. The North Bay heat detector was intentionally isolated 2 days before the fire, he said. The isolation remained active. The sprinkler flow switch transmitted normally once water discharged. Aaron's attorney said, my client believed the detector would be restored before testing. Len looked at Aaron, who was responsible for restoring it. Aaron said, I believed my father's maintenance contractor handled that. I slid the North Coast invoice forward. The invoice states restoration by Mercer Smart Systems licensed electrician, I said. The customer of record was Aaron. His attorney read the handwritten warning. Aaron said, that was a paperwork misunderstanding. Dana moved to the work log. Aaron explained that Eli initialed battery commissioning and used his access code to open the cabinet. Marisol spoke next. The form itself violates our program rules, she said. A minor trainee cannot be the responsible signer for commissioning. Aaron was the supervising electrician. Even if Eli performed the task, responsibility remained with Aaron. The strongest excuse weakened, but it did not fail yet. Aaron leaned forward. Eli told me he knew what he was doing. He wanted more responsibility. My father fills his head with the idea that he's some kind of natural electrician. Eli's face went red. I put one hand on the metal lunchbox between us. Dana asked Eli to describe the night. He did. Slowly. He admitted initialing the wrong line. He admitted opening the cabinet earlier while Aaron watched, though he said Aaron entered the code. He admitted being afraid to challenge his father. Aaron's attorney asked, isn't it possible you returned to the workshop later? No. Your access code was used. I never knew the code. You expect us to believe your father had nothing to do with shaping this account. Eli looked at me, then back at the attorney. My grandfather told me to say the part that makes me look bad, too. That answer changed the room. Dana placed 2 photographs on the table. One showed Paige's doorbell camera at 11:13 p.m. with Eli entering the house. The second showed Aaron's truck leaving at 11:15. Aaron said I went to check the building after dropping him off. Exactly, Dana said. She opened the energy monitoring report. At 11:41, the control system powered up. At 11:46, the battery inverter energized. At 11:48, the load spiked. The data traced to the North Bay feeder. Len added that the physical disconnect had been closed after the yellow torque mark was applied. Aaron looked at me. For the first time, he understood why I had not argued on the night of the fire. The yellow line he had dismissed as one of my old man habits had recorded the movement he thought no one could prove. His attorney said, the data shows when the equipment energized, not who operated it. That was true. Then Dana displayed the cabinet controller's administrator log. At 11:39, Eli's temporary code had been reset from Aaron's administrator account. At 11:40, that code opened the cabinet. At 11:46, Aaron's administrator credentials authorized commissioning mode. The excuse failed. Aaron stared at the screen. Paige covered her mouth. Eli did not move. Dana said, Mr. Mercer, can you explain why you changed your son's code after dropping him at home, used it to open the cabinet, then authorized commissioning under your own administrator account? Aaron's attorney whispered to him. He said nothing. Len placed the broker email beside the reports. This is not proof of intent by itself, he said, but it establishes a financial motive and a plan tied to a total loss outcome. Aaron finally spoke. The system was supposed to run a short test. I didn't intend a fire. No one interrupted him. He continued. The battery supplier said the modules were stable. I needed a live demonstration for a client. I bypassed the detector because construction dust kept triggering faults. Eli had already signed the sheet. I thought if something went wrong, it would look like a training mistake, not fraud. Paige made a sound like the air had been knocked out of her. Aaron turned toward Eli. I never thought it would actually burn. Eli's voice was barely audible. You still picked me. Aaron looked down. That was the truth at the center of everything. He had not planned the exact fire. But before he energized the cabinet, he had prepared someone else to carry the blame. Dana stated the insurer's immediate decisions. The claim would remain under formal investigation. Any portion tied to intentional or materially misrepresented conduct could be denied. The company would not issue an advance payment to Mercer Smart Systems. The building owner's legitimate damage claim would be evaluated separately. Marisol said the apprenticeship program was clearing Eli of responsibility for commissioning. Mercer Smart Systems would remain suspended from student placements, and Aaron's conduct would be referred to the state licensing board for review. Len said the fire department would forward its findings to the appropriate authorities. He did not promise an arrest or a conviction. He explained that those decisions belonged to others after review. The power Aaron thought he controlled disappeared one piece at a time. The insurance advance, the students, the workshop, the story that Eli had caused the fire. Aaron looked at me with tears in his eyes. I was drowning, he said. You knew the company was struggling. I knew you were proud. I did not know you were using deposits to cover old jobs. You could have helped me. You could have asked. You would have said no, maybe. He laughed once bitterly. There it is. I leaned forward. You did not lose this building because I chose Eli over you. You lost it the night you decided he was easier to sacrifice than your debt. Aaron closed his eyes. No one raised a voice after that. The meeting ended with signatures acknowledging receipt of documents. Aaron left with his attorney. Paige stayed behind long enough to put a hand on Eli's shoulder. Eli let her. He did not follow his father. The aftermath took longer than the confrontation. The insurer covered part of the building damage under my property policy after determining that I had not authorized the hazardous installation. They did not pay for Aaron's equipment losses connected to the unapproved system. The settlement was not enough to restore everything, so we rebuilt slowly. Former students came on Saturdays. The lineman from Arizona sent a check and a note that said Nina had once kept him from dropping out. The community college donated used benches. Miller Fire Protection replaced the alarm panel at cost and added a lockout procedure requiring property owner authorization for any detector isolation. The North Bay reopened 9 months later. We did not make it prettier than before. We made it safer. Aaron's contractor license was suspended for a year after the board's process. He entered a repayment plan with several clients and sold the remaining service vans. The state investigation ended in a negotiated resolution that included restitution and compliance monitoring. There was no dramatic prison sentence. There was paperwork, loss, public embarrassment, and the slow work of facing people he had misled. Paige separated from him for several months. She and Eli moved into a small apartment near the college. Eventually, she allowed supervised visits. Whether their marriage survives is still uncertain. I did not pay Aaron's debts. I did pay for counseling for Eli because protecting someone does not end when the accusation disappears. For weeks, he woke at night smelling smoke that was not there. He would come into the kitchen and sit without speaking. I learned not to fill the silence. One night he said, I keep thinking if I had read the line better, none of this would have happened. I set the yellow paint marker on the table between us. Your father created a form you were not allowed to sign. Used your code and energized equipment after you left, I said. Reading one line differently would not have changed who made those choices. He rolled the marker under his palm. Do you think he loves me? Yes. How can both things be true? Because love is a feeling. Trust is a pattern. He looked at me for a long time. Then he put the marker in the old lunchbox. During the suspension, Aaron finally wrote a letter without excuses. I changed his code because I knew it would point to him. I was willing to risk his future to protect mine. I do not know how to ask forgiveness for that. Eli read it twice. Do I have to answer? No, you decide. He folded it into the bottom of the lunchbox. 6 months after the lab reopened, Eli entered the full electrical apprenticeship program. On his first day, he wore new work boots that squeaked on the concrete. Marisol handed him a torque wrench and told him nobody cared how fast he read, as long as he understood what he touched. I stood near the back of the classroom trying not to look proud enough to embarrass him. After the lesson, he called me over to inspect his first panel. The conductors were dressed neatly. The lugs were torqued correctly. The labels were straight. He took out the yellow paint marker and drew a thin line across each screw. Electricity doesn't care who you meant to be, he said. I smiled. You have been listening. Sometimes. Months later, Aaron came to the lab for a counseling-arranged visit. He sat across from Eli and said, I used the thing you struggle with as a weapon. I knew people might believe you misunderstood the form. Were you trying to burn the lab? Eli asked. No. I forced a test to keep a client. When it burned, I saw insurance as a way out, and I blamed you because I had already prepared the story. I don't trust you, Eli said. I know. Aaron had brought a new metal lunchbox. Eli told him I'm keeping Grandpa's. Aaron accepted the answer and took his gift home. We are not a healed family. Not yet. Aaron and I speak once every few weeks. We do not discuss money unless it concerns restitution. He works for another contractor under supervision and is rebuilding a reputation one small job at a time. Sometimes he asks about the lab. Sometimes I answer. Eli sees him in counseling and occasionally at lunch. Paige does not force more. As for me, I finally removed Nina's red coat from the peg, not because I wanted less of her in the building, because the lab no longer needed to remain frozen on the last day she saw it. I had it cleaned, placed it in a shadow box, and hung it near the entrance with a small plaque that read, She saw what this place could become. Under it, we added a new safety board. Every student signs their own name. Every supervisor signs responsibility. Every disabled alarm point requires 2 approvals. No borrowed codes, no crowded forms. No one person carries a consequence that belongs to someone else. On Saturday mornings, the workshop fills with the sound Nina imagined. Before it had heat, drills, questions, laughter, and young people discovering that being good with their hands is a kind of intelligence. Eli still brings the old metal lunchbox. The yellow paint marker rides in the top tray. And every time he draws a line across a finished connection, I think about the mark that survived the fire long enough to tell the truth. Some families believe loyalty means hiding damage. I believe loyalty means refusing to let the quietest person be buried under it. If this story stayed with you, tell me whether Aaron's apology is the beginning of repair or only the beginning of accountability. And if you believe family justice should protect the innocent before punishing the guilty, subscribe for the next story.